All right, everyone, we should be live. Let's make sure that's actually the case. Over on Rumble, of course, there are a bunch of people waiting. They have updated their live streaming capability, it seems, and you can now see how many people are waiting to actually watch the live stream. We're going to make sure we're live. It says that we're live, but it might take a minute to actually go through. Anyway, we've got some chat. Sigilstone17 says, Styx can't disavow Uno posting. I'll just play the reverse card if he tries. The HUD sucker proxy, it stinks like sex in here. Sixer, but I had a shower. And Beagle Cake saying, what's up, guys? Hello to all of you and many more that I believe are watching live. We'll, again, make absolutely sure that's happening. Yeah, we're live over on Rumble. Got my artificial co-host over here. We got a lot to cover today. We're going to talk about some ghoulishness with the Oceangate thing. As predicted, by the way, it's been... pointed out by who is John Galt there. Actually, I was correct, unfortunately, in my prediction with regards to where things were going to go with that. By the way, at this very moment, if there is any survivor on the Titan sub, they're probably dying as we speak. So unfortunate for them. It's very likely that they're already dead. They haven't found any remains yet or anything like that. Even if you do manage to find it, like, you know, if it takes several hours to bring it to the surface, you're verging in on the end as far as oxygen goes, and looking at hypoxia, looking at hypothermia, that's been pointed out. So it's very likely that they're all already dead. Unless by some miracle, the sub just lost its connection with its main craft and is floating around somewhere, in the actual ocean. They find it floating around 2 days later, but because the hatch can't be opened, they're dead anyway. That's always possible, too. It seems like they might have gotten caught on wreckage. They were talking about banging noises. We'll talk about that in brief. Anyway, also, we're going to talk about Elon Musk versus Mark Zuckerberg. It appears that there may actually be a fight between the two of them in a cage match. So we're going to be talking about that, too. That's definitely meme-worthy. And Adam Schiff, of course, earlier was censured by Congress. It was basically a party line vote. A handful of Republicans voted present, 6 of them actually. And 5 of them have an excuse because they're on House Ethics. And they're like, well, we're investigating Adam Schiff still. We can't, we don't want to appear biased. So we're not going to be able to vote yes. We're not going to vote no either. We're just going to vote present. There is one standout. His name is Ken Buck, voting present without a good reason. And we'll be talking about some other good shit, too. So anyway, there's lots and lots to talk about today. Lots and lots of news. Dr. Grand has a good analysis. Yeah, Drennan is correct. For once, I don't really like UFC, boxing, stuff like that, wrestling. But if it was Elon Musk versus Mark Zuckerberg, I might actually have to watch that. Just saying, that would definitely be entertaining. We'll get into the matchup between the two of them a little bit later. Sigilstone17, the sub memes have been chef's kiss, deliciously spicy. And apparently the only man sub capable of reaching them is owned by Steam owner Gabe Newell. Interesting. I mean, I would think you would send an unmanned sub down with, some sort of robotic claw, and you would try to hook it onto the sub if you find it, and they haven't yet, and you'd tow it back up. AOC versus Elon. That would be funny. But yeah, we'll be talking about Zuck versus Musk and all of these other things throughout this stream. Ashley, Oceangate is the result of diversity hires and cutting corners on projects. Don't ever forget that. It does appear that diversity hiring was a factor, potentially, in the incompetence that appears to have gone on there. I was pointed out the other day that one facet of this is immediately, it was pointed out that a lack of regulations were obviously responsible. Starlink was also talked about in this context. We'll go right to this news story. First and foremost, I wanted to point something out. And there are links in the descriptions. You can follow along with what I'm generally talking about, by the way, cross-platform. First and foremost, Snopes got fact-checked the other day and quickly changed their fact-check. It appears twice, actually. They initially claimed that Starlink, that is Elon Musk's company with the satellites, was responsible for the Titan disaster because they were the ones that were supplying the actual feed for the mission. That's not actually true, and I created a community note on a couple of posts actually about this. They were the ones that were allowing the ship to correspond with land. They were not the ones that were coordinating the communications between the ship and the sub itself. So that was false. And originally, Snopes, they declared that it was true that that Starlink was responsible in part for what was going on. They quickly changed it to unverified or something like that. And that was funny in a gallows humor sort of way. It's funny because, again, they jumped the gun. The fact checkers don't actually peddle in facts. They peddle in opinion mostly. I would love to make a video sometime. Just spend a couple of hours going through Snopes' own posts and cutting them to pieces because a lot of them are spurious or potentially spurious. It's really no more factual than what you'd get from some boomer on Facebook who's been watching a bunch of Alex Jones. So, opinionated junkie. Looking to start crypto mining. Wish me luck. Yeah, good luck. I still hold a lot of crypto, and I'm going to keep holding it too because I'm not convinced that it's dead. Disclaimer, that is my personal opinion, not investment advice. Another thing that I wanted to point out with the Oceangate thing that's going on, they're going down to the Titanic. They've lost communication with the surface. At this very time, like literally when you're watching live, is around the time that they're running out of oxygen, assuming they're not already dead. Hypothermia, because they're so far underwater, the temperature down there is very low, probably already killed them some hours ago. They are probably dead. This is no longer a search and rescue mission. This is a search mission. I have a feeling within the next 48 hours, they will largely abandon that. And sometime, maybe 13 years from now, they'll get pictures of the wreckage. And the skeletons will be propped up inside of the sub, assuming it didn't suffer catastrophic failure, and just be staring out the porthole much as they were when they were still alive. Rather fitting, because if you're willing to pay $250,000 to go look at the wreck of the Titanic, of course, you have an interest there. I guess if you die a short distance away from the Titanic, underwater, under similar circumstances, well, you kind of got your wish. It's a little bit poetic now, isn't it? But there's one thing that I must take umbrage with here. And I pointed it out the other day. I made a post and I'm like, how many people in Hollywood right now are on their 15th line of cocaine for the night and speedily trying to draw up a draft of, some sort of movie about the Oceangate experience or something to that effect. It turns out that Hollywood has been preempted. The British have preempted it. As of tonight, I believe, according to this actual post, there will be a documentary that is aired. Variety was talking about it the other day. And when I first saw it, I had to fact check it myself to make sure the post was real because I'm like, okay, I expected that it would be quick. These ghouls trying to make money off of what was going on with the Titan sub. I didn't expect it to happen within a couple of days. The British apparently found a way. And so they're making sort of a supercut, actually, with regards to coverage, updates, and so forth. Trying to make it more visceral. They'll have, music and all of that stuff and probably a 2-hour special or some shit. And they're going to be making a lot of money off that because they're the first ones to release something on the subject that isn't independent content creation related or just straight up news reporting. Well, I predicted it the other day. I did not predict that it would come true that quickly. I had expected maybe a week later, maybe a couple of weeks later. Okay, some Hollywood crew has gotten some oceanic shots. They took a boat out there. They did some dry commentary. They send down an unmanned sub. It doesn't find anything, but you tease the audience with it, and you slash together a half-assed documentary or something like that. You put it on TV and you get a bunch of money for it. Maybe you just do it internet only. That's what I expected. I didn't expect that a mainline news group would do it within a 48-hour period. So I was too right. I was more right than I expected, and it's ghoulish. It's ghoulish to, it's clearly grifting. It's clearly a money-making effort on their behalf to not even wait until there's not the possibility that the people that are still aboard the sub are dead. There is still a possibility that they're alive. There are a couple of circumstances in which they could theoretically live a few days longer. I can get into that, although it's rather morbid. Dyatlov Pass style, ring a bell. To not wait until that is really, it's kind of low now, isn't it? These, again, the people might still be alive. One way in which they could survive a little bit longer is if they decided to draw straws and like one or two of the people out of the 5 aboard dies. They kill themselves or they are killed. They're subsequently consumed. Raising the caloric intake of the other people on the sub would potentially help with hypothermia. They're at least eating. They take the clothes from the dead people, etc., in order to try to stay warm. There's less CO2 being produced because, those people aren't breathing anymore. And under those circumstances, they might be able to get an extra 48 hours or thereabouts. It's not likely that happened. It's more likely that the people panicked at some point in the last 24 hours and went crazy and they're already dead. They've suffered hypoxia. They may have killed themselves. They may have killed one another. You're going to have to autopsy the sub if you ever recover it. The other possibility is that they were dead anyway. The other possibility is that at some point on the descent, they lost control of the sub. There was a catastrophic failure. These people died very quickly. And there's literally the only thing that you're going to recover is a boiled pile of blood, basically surrounded by bones. In fact, that's not the most unlikely outcome here. They'll probably find the submersible, although there's no guarantee it's in the immediate vicinity of the Titanic. I just find it disgraceful that a news group, and I wouldn't expect anything less from the legacy media, so I'm not sure why I'm surprised, for them to make a documentary, self-proclaimed, on the subject so soon after the events have begun occurring, when, again, there is the possibility. I mean, they announced this while there was still at least a single-digit possibility that they would find this sub, be able to hook it onto a tow cable, and raise it back up. They're still going forward with it. The British people should absolutely boycott the broadcast. Don't watch it. Don't hate watch it. Ignore it. Let it get the lowest ratings in British history. I mean, if you have any sense whatsoever, you're not watching that kind of shit. If you want to watch it weeks from now, when it's no longer making them money, when it's been robbed, it's been pirated, and it's been uploaded to some third-party site where they're not getting any revenue from it, that's fine. Otherwise, it's not even a documentary, though. I mean, it sounds like they're taking news footage that's been slashed together, so it's been edited together, along with, on-the-ground reporting. Hey, here we are in our yacht looking down at the deep blue sea. We're nowhere near the Titanic, but, we're just going to give you some shots of, the blue water out there. And that's all. I mean, it's possible this sub got attacked by some sort of animal. A blue whale ran into it and it destroyed one of the propellers that was responsible for them being able to move. And it just went spiraling to the bottom. That's possible. And they lost communication because of the jolting, knocked out their computer. Their Logitech game controller stopped functioning. Any of a number of things could have happened. I feel sorry for the people that were aboard the craft. And some people, I've seen this on community notes, there's practically a civil war over there. They're trying to draw comparisons between interest in this particular instance and like some of the migrant boat crossings here in Europe, especially around Italy, and just being ghoulish about it, like saying like, this doesn't matter, oh, ha, 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 but they're all rich. And so, it's good that they're dead or something like that. And Jesus Christ. The amount of bullshit that I'm seeing with regards to this case is the only reason at this point that it's newsworthy. Accidents at sea happen all of the time. I'm not particularly interested in that except for ancient historical precedent, like look at the Maritime History channel on YouTube, for example. Lots of good stuff. I'm not really interested in the incident itself because we don't have any evidence one way or the other what the hell is happening anyway. So right now, there's nothing really to talk about, other than the ghoulishness of the legacy media and similar people. John Smith, do you have an opinion of Dan Bongino? Yeah, I've watched some of his stuff. I have no problem with that. The Great Scalzini, Sticks Live, watch for the news, stay for cat butt. Yeah, Dicky Dick here does not have an asshole. He has a tag. Let's see. Scott Christie Jones. Titanic feels like a psyop. Look here, shiny thing. Yeah, I mean, it is kind of a distraction from, the Biden crime scandal and the FBI cover-up, etc. Adam Schiff being censored. it is still an interesting story. I mean, you know, it sounds like the sub had some systemic issues. There were concerns about this particular submersible for some years prior to it going down this particular instance, and they were apparently not listened to. Nighthawk, have you heard of the Federal Reserve's FedNow service launching in July? Is this a way to slowly usher in a central bank digital currency? It's a preemptive step towards doing so. Ashley, the bodies aren't even cold, go, yet shame on BBC. Well, they're definitely cold because it's about 42 degrees down there. So that sub is basically like a giant refrigerator at this point. King of Biltong. Good morning from Antons in Roanoke, Texas. Hashtag Clank Nation. Yes, indeed. The people on the sub wish they had some fucking biltong right now. And more than one toilet. There's one very limited capacity toilet aboard, and you're there for several days in virtual pitch blackness, not knowing what the fuck is going on. By the way, I'll get to the banging noises really briefly. When they say that they heard banging noises in the vicinity of the Titanic, that does not mean anything. It does not mean that these people are alive. It could be wreckage knocking together on the Titanic. It could be an animal of some sort. It could be basically anything. It could be a loose rock that is carefully balanced and slowly being perturbed by the ins and outs of the flow of water and knocking against its compatriots. There's no way to know whether that has anything to do with the sub. I think it's wishful thinking. These people, there's a 99% chance they're already dead at this time. Nick Burgett. Morning, Sticks. Do you think the sub story is being hyped to block the Durham testimony yesterday? Do you think they'll charge people with treason? No and no. I think that people are genuinely interested in it because a lot of people have a limited attention span for politics anyway, and not everyone's interested in it. It is a human interest story, so it is of interest. I'm talking about it from the perspective of the ghoulishness of the legacy media and some of the other people commenting on it, so not so much as the loss of the submersible itself, but it is an interesting, intriguing story. As far as treason charges, no, that won't happen. That would be too much to ask. Matt G. Hammond, did Massey vote yes now that the fine was removed? Yes, to his credit, he did vote yes, but the thing is, we'll be talking about the censoring movement and how it's completely useless. It doesn't matter. Sigil Stone 17, I'm kecking uncontrollably. Just saw a meme of Derek Chauvin kneeling on the sub. Yeah, that could be funny. Beagle Cake. Rip sub people. Also, is that Garfield next to you? No, this is Dicky Dick, which literally means fatty fat. It's a cat meme from the Netherlands. It's about a very chubby cat that repeatedly thinks that everything around it should be eaten or gets confused very easily and has various misadventures. Ronan361, here's a bribe to float the idea to Clankdom to dress a Jesus plush in a Hawaiian shirt, call it Sticks, and have it teabag Barney the dinosaur plush. Good social media promotion tool for the show. Ha. Yeah, that could work. Anton V. Trying a Rumble rant whilst eating some biltong. Don't want to support YouTube. Only works through my PC, though. Hashtag Clank Nation. Yes, apparently the Rumble app still has a few issues to work out. Anyway, getting past Oceangate, because it is of interest, but again, my main focus is on people are being fucking ghoulish. There's people down there that might still be dying. They may not actually be dead yet, and people are already planning to make money off of them. How soon until somebody writes a really hastily edited draft novella and rams it through in order to get their 10,000 copies? Probably not long. I'm sure that there are several people snorting coke and doing that right now. Next news story. Alex Heath is here. I've confirmed that Mark Zuckerberg is serious about fighting Elon Musk and is now waiting on the details if Musk decides to follow through. The story speaks for itself, a Meta spokesperson says. Ari Zuck's Instagram post saying, send me a location. And Elon Musk replied, Vegas Octagon. So I guess that's where he wants to have this fight. Yes, it looks like we may actually be treated to something that is stereotypically 2020s meme-worthy, which is Mark Zuckerberg versus Elon Musk in a cage match, UFC style, I suppose. Now, here's the matchup. Elon Musk is much taller than Mark Zuckerberg. He's, I believe, 6'1". Zuckerberg is about 5'8", so he's DeSantis height. That's one advantage. Zuckerberg would obviously thus have a smaller reach. By the way, Zuckerberg has that particular build that always pisses me off in a weird visceral sense, where you've got somebody who has a relatively broad chest and stomach area, so that's relatively long, but for some odd reason, their arms and legs appear slightly stunted. I've seen people like that before, and I don't know what animal instinct it is in me, but when I see people that look like that, I get furious. Zuckerberg is one of them. There was one retard on the UVM campus once, just walking by, didn't say anything, don't know who he is, but he just looked about like that as far as his build went. And I just, for some reason, I got mad, and I don't even understand. It must be a physiognomy related thing. It's got to be some primal instinct. Zuckerberg is much shorter. He is much lighter. He has less reach. However, he does have the advantage of better training. Elon Musk he had been kind of on the chub side years ago. It appears he'd been working out. He got more fit. Zuckerberg too. He was like skinny fat for a while, and he's been doing jujitsu and UFC training style stuff. I don't know exactly who would win in this particular matchup. I mean, if Musk spends a couple of months training with a competent trainer, I don't know who would win. I did keep in mind, I don't give a fuck about this sort of shit normally. But can you imagine the memes? Can you imagine the hilarity of Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk squaring off? And I think Zuckerberg's also a bit younger too. I think he's I don't exactly remember how old he is. I think he's a bit younger than Musk too. So it would be up in the air. You've got someone who's considerably bigger, considerably more potentially strong if he took proper training, but the other individual has taken that training already. I don't know exactly where it would go. I'd give a 50-50. I wouldn't even have an explanation. One thing that Zuckerberg does have as an advantage, synths are much more resilient against physical damage than actual biological humans, and he quite clearly is a synth. So, he was programmed as well as they could make him at the time with the technology. I guess Zuckerberg probably has a slight advantage because he's not actually human. He's a cyborg. But anyway, we'll see if it ends up happening. This could just be them effectively just grandstanding to get attention, and then it falls through. Like 6 months later, it's like, oh yeah, we might still do it, and we haven't picked a venue yet. We're not exactly sure the ramifications. Anyway, Musk, if he were to bulk up, if he were to take training, I think would be a shoo-in to win, based just on the massive size differential. But will he do that? He might just wander in there and say, well, it doesn't matter. I'm getting attention for my platform. If I take a couple of kicks, it doesn't really matter now, does it? Be interesting. We'll see exactly what happens with that, but people are talking about it big time anyway because it's just fucking funny. I would prefer that Musk win, to be clear, in that particular matchup, but I will give a 50-50 because of that differential. See, early life check. Do you foresee a time when financial losses and social unrest get so bad the governments and companies drop the Glubu Hoemo DEI initiative? When it becomes unprofitable, that's the only time that they'll drop it. Then they'll move to the next one. Maybe it'll be star-spangled bullshit like back in the 50s. Oh, well, your product doesn't have enough American flags on it, so we're not going to invest with you because your competitor has 5 more American flags, and they've got a picture of grandma saluting an eagle flying through the sky with one teardrop falling out of its eye. That was basically branding in the 1950s, by the way, in the United States. Look up some fucking reels of old commercials if you don't believe me. It's been going on a lot longer than the modern ESG structure. Ramon C. GTC. Can we get AOC versus MTG just for the lulz? That'd be funny. They would have to, they'd have a vat full of pudding and they can wrestle around in that. I'm sure that a lot of people would be into that shit. Magnum Norse. They're scared of Trump backlash once he gets back into office. Yes, the system is terrified of Donald Trump. Congo Bungo. Blast Zuckerberg with an EMP device. Yeah, if you made a crude EMP device with some camera flashers or something like that, probably Zuckerberg, all of a sudden, he'd leer over just like a deactivated synth. Al-Qaeda. Oceangate is love. Oceangate is life. Sticks 2023. Yeah, Musk might cheat with some weird beams. That would be hilarious. I hope that it does happen. Matt G. Hammond, this would be more interesting if Zuck and Elon had robots fighting each other. Yeah, like that old, what was the fucking name of that show where they had robots attacking each other? That was back in the 2000s, and people would make robots, and they were remote controlled, and then they would fight one another, see who could get destroyed quicker. It's pretty funny. Not just a string. First Rumble rant. Fidelity, BlackRock, etc. are after a sport Bitcoin ETF. Thoughts? Invest FOMO. Trying to make money off Bitcoin will be fun to watch, but not efforts to shake down plebes for Bitcoin. I've heard of that, although I've also heard countermanding evidence that they're not actually attempting to do that. So I remain open-minded. Cam2425IA works here. Maybe you need to update. Matt G. Hammond. This would be more interesting if... Oh, I already read that one with the Zuck and Elon having robots fight each other. Citizen Zero. Styx is racist towards homunculi. Lol. Saw a video back in the day where some dude claimed that he beat off and then used the sperm and injected it into chicken eggs to make homunculi. And he had these weird figures in jars that were supposedly living things. And I'm like, well, I would test this myself, but I'm not into weird shit like that. But maybe somebody else has ejaculated near a chicken egg and, put it in the yolk. I don't know. Lempronius, I wonder why there was nowhere near the same love for Heathcliff as there was or is for Garfield. Heathcliff is decently funny. I like both. And Felix the Cat. Sigil Stone 17. I can see the headlines for Musk v. Zuck now. I can't say that on YouTube. And did you see the Quartering announced he's going to produce new tech exclusive content as well as general push for new tech? Good on him. I'll have to take a look at that and aid him in his push. Trip Boom, the amount of money they would make would be crazy. Yeah, I mean, you'd be looking at 10 million easily. Musk versus Zuckerberg, easily. Just as a starter. That would be a good one. I mean, again, somebody like me who's ambivalent towards sports, I'd probably watch that shit. The Patriot Cairo. YouTube bans Jordan Peterson RFK interview labeled Vax misinformation. Meanwhile, YouTube peddling, I can't say that first part, misinformation, we'll just say, for 2+ years. Censored speech is true. Yeah, absolutely. Especially on YouTube. Yeah, robot wars and battle bots. Iggy the Incubus, I'm amused and annoyed by the fact that anytime you criticize Joe, the D's or R's or Ron, people always deflect to, yeah, but Trump. Yeah, I mean, it gets so old. It's a pile of horse shit. Next news story. Adam Schiff censured by House for false allegations on Trump-Russia collusion. No Democrats voted with the Republicans to punish Schiff. Now, here's the good. Adam Schiff has been repudiated. Only about a half a dozen people in the last half century in the House have been censured by the House. It is historic. Adam Schiff is getting punished. The bad part is it's a slap on the wrist. It means nothing further. It's meaningless. There's no actual punishment that goes along with basically saying, hey, you lied to the American people for a protracted period of time, and he did. He knowingly lied to the American people. There was no Russian collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. There was no collusion there. We know this. Durham found that. It's been investigated for years. There was nothing. The closest thing that you have is that Manafort, who did dirty business dealings long ago in the Bush administration, was in communication with some Russians more recently. Again, it's a non-issue. It has nothing to do whatsoever with the campaign itself. It's used as an excuse. Here's the thing, though. I want to see them reintroduce this. And you know that the House ethics people won't vote for it, as they voted against this in this case. I'll get to that in a moment. And Ken Buck, I suppose, who has no excuse. But you have the votes. Why don't you introduce some sort of tangible punishment? So it doesn't need to be a $16 million fine. How about a $50,000 fine? There's no way that Thomas Massie can come out and say that that's excessive. So he'd have to vote for it, right? Unless he decides to say, well, the 8th Amendment doesn't allow this, or something to that bullshit effect. The 27th Amendment doesn't allow me to modify the salary of a member of Congress prior to an election, so we're not ever allowed to fine anyone within Congress. Let him be the apologist that he is, really dogpiling. They should reintroduce the article, not for censorship, but for some sort of punishment. Doesn't even need to be a fine. Maybe you just kick him out for a while physically. Have the sergeant in arms drag him off by his hair. Well, that'd be hard because he's balding. Have the sergeant in arms shoo him off like the bad boy that he is. and punish him that way. You're not allowed to participate in Congress for the next couple of months because we've had it with you. You lied to the American people. You knew that you were lying. You clearly knew that you were lying. Go fuck yourself. But they won't do that because McCarthy is weak. The strongest thing that he could do in the case where a member of Congress knowingly lied to the American people for several years running was a censorship that didn't even have the full vote of the party and means absolutely nothing. It's basically you done goofed. Be sorry for, be sad. You should feel guilty for what you've done. It's a strongly worded letter, so it doesn't bring any form of closure. I would note that the 5 members of House Ethics that voted present as opposed to voting for do have a legitimate excuse because they're still investigating Adam Schiff. It makes sense for them to vote present in this case. They voted present because they have to continue investigating. They can't seem like they've prejudged him. That makes sense. But where's Ken Buck's? Where's his excuse? He's not on House Ethics and he still voted present. Well, maybe he wants to be on House Ethics or something like that. We're not exactly sure. I'm a little stuffed up today. Been sneezing too. For absolutely no reason. It's like I didn't know that there was any pollen in the air or anything like that. So yeah, Adam Schiff censured, and it means, well, quite literally, it means butt fuck nothing. Unfortunately, he should not be in Congress considering his treason against the American people. The landlord harassment channel. Zuck always struck me as a Mike Tyson level badass. Yeah. Magnum Norse. Our future is cybernetic implants to confuse us to vote for a tard. Oh, wait, we already did that. Yeah, exactly. Dystopia is now. Who's your daddy? What is your thoughts on lab-grown meat for sale now in the U.S.? I would never eat lab-grown meat. I'd rather raise my own meat if it came down to that. If the price skyrockets, and by the way, there is a grift here. I'll get into that briefly. If the price were to skyrocket, I'd raise my own, realizing that they can't drive up the price of literally everything required to make meat forever because it would just be feasibly, economically impossible. What they want is for them to eat filet mignon and you eat cockroaches. That's basically the point of this. Here's what they can do to try to compel you. They will do what they're doing with green energy. Green energy cannot compete with traditional fuel sources because it's less efficient. It requires more imported parts and goods, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's much more expensive. So what does the government do? It robs you with taxes and then uses subsidies to drive down the cost to make it more comparable. What the government will do if they want you to eat the lab-grown meat is they'll subsidize it. They'll say, well, here's a study, a carefully cherry-picked study from the FDA showing that it's marginally healthier, it's more sustainable, it's more ESG friendly because environmentalism, even though it actually uses more emissions in the end. And so we're going to drive the cost down so that it's less than standard meat. So the poor will eat lab-grown meat. And the middle and upper middle class, once in a while, they'll get a snack that's actually not. They'll be able to slay the fatted calf and, get their ribeye or something. And the rich will continue eating actual meat. It is a grift. It's the same con job that we've seen with energy resources. They're trying to centralize energy to make your car reliant upon a centralized grid instead of you being able to store any appreciable form of fuel on your own. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to do the same with food. This is why, genetically modified crops are still used. There are countries that are banning them right now. In the United States, they keep it up. Why? Because they want you to be reliant on their food sources. They don't want you to be able to grow your own. They don't want you to be able to grow heirloom corn or anything like that. All of the cropland in the United States is at least reasonably adjacent to a Monsanto farm, so they can ensure that there will be crossbreeding, allowing them to sue you if you step out of line in any way. If you're in the margins, in the hinterlands, on marginally arable land, they'll just look you over. But they will excessively tax you. I'm surprised that they haven't introduced a tax on people growing their own food at this point. It'd be right down their alley. So no, everyone should boycott it in every way, shape, or form. Never eat it. Don't hate eat it like some people have done with veggie substitutes for meats, etc. And mushroom burger is fine, but the stuff that's made out of textured soy that literally looks like a pork chop but isn't, it's a grift. It's an attempt to control you more. Chuck Morris, Zuck can't win. There's 3 laws prevent him from harming a human. It'd still be funny, though. Sebastian Monroe, thanks for making my workout seem short. Morning clanks while exercising makes the fitness journey less daunting and more fun. Hashtag self-improvement. Good on you. Iggy the Incubus, the same Congress that lets J6 prisoners languish in solitary, untried and uncharged for 2 years, shrieking about the 8th Amendment. Interesting. Yeah, Thomas Massey is an asshat. Let's see. Where were we at? Oh, yeah, we got to talk about DeSantis. I posted this earlier. I'll read it verbatim. DeSantis fan once again abusing community notes to place an irrelevant CN on a post critical of the candidate. CN community note. The claim is objective fact. DeSantis did vote to fast track the TPP. And yes, he objectively did. I included a link on my community note, by the way, countering this one. And we know exactly who made it. Probably a good idea to export a follower list and do some research. Do you know how we know who made it? It's because the individual who made the community note repeated themselves verbatim in an actual reply. Kind of belying the fact that you're supposed to take it to the replies because a community note is not actually appropriate on that specific post. Let me go to it here really quickly. I've got to go to my profile in order to grab it up. Just a moment. Don't worry. Yeah, the post was Team Trump. Text Trump to 88022. Ron DeSantis voted to give Obama fast-track authority for the job-killing globalistic Trans-Pacific Partnership. Now, the latter part's hyperbolic opinion. That's allowed. You're not supposed to fact-check that. And the first part is absolutely objectively true. There are multiple community notes here. The original community note was posted by the other individual, whose link in the description. You can see the username. Not sure if I'm allowed to read that out on a YouTube video without falling prey of their rules against raiding and trolling, so I won't do that. Their note, which was the same as their comment, which is how we know they're the one that made it. The TPP is a trade agreement with 11 other countries in the Asia Pacific, which is true, including Canada and Mexico. True. That sought to eliminate over 18,000 taxes various countries put on made in American products sold overseas. You have heard it here first, everyone. DeSantis fans, in order to defend their candidate, are now defending the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's there in black and white. The note's there. It's literally there. I posted the screen grab for people that need to see it. I've also got an archive of the original user's main channel, although, of course, it doesn't include the note itself. They're defending the TPP. Now, where do you remember the TPP from? This is big in the 2016 election. Hillary Clinton realized it was so unpopular that she scrubbed her own autobiography, in which she called it the gold standard of trade deals, in order to remove that section and reissue her autobiography in sanitized form. Trump pledged that the second that he got into office, the TPP was dead. There was no way that he would sign it, just get rid of it because it's dead. He made good on that promise. I've also seen some DeSantis fans trying to conflate the TPP, which was a pile of bullshit. I'll get into why in a minute, with the USMCA, which was the reform of NAFTA. Under the USMCA, a problematic trade agreement called NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, was modified to be more fair to the United States. Trump took initiative, he got Canada and Mexico aboard, and he reformed it. Not perfect. There wasn't an enormous sea change in most provisions on the bill, but it was better. He put a Band-Aid on a gaping wound, but at least he put a Band-Aid on it. What DeSantis appears to be aiming for is, and voted for, again, many years ago when he was in Congress, was to create a gaping wound. This is an apples to oranges comparison. DeSantis did vote to fast-track the TPP. He did vote for a globalistic trade partnership, and here's the problem. If you read what the TPP really is about, the TPP was about people who are rich, moneyed, monopolistic corporate and government interests in all member states screwing one another's population. So instead of it being a U.S. corporate magnate uses the U.S. government's power and influence to gain grants, to outcompete people, to crush smaller competitors in the U.S., and somebody else similar in Vietnam does the same. No. Now the Vietnamese business monopoly can branch into the United States and crush small businesses and entrepreneurs in the U.S., and the U.S. business can do the same in Vietnam. It's a step towards globalism. It's a goddamn complete grift. It's a step towards making a world in which the rich moneyed interests, even less than they already do, experience any form of national constraints whatsoever. That's all that the TPP was about. Again, it was so desperately unpopular once people looked into it, that Hillary Clinton herself, globalist madam-in-chief herself, scrubbed her autobiography. I'm sitting here seeing a self-proclaimed long-term, I can look back through their history, DeSantis fan, mentioning the Obama White House archives as a reason for why the TPP should have been passed, and Ron DeSantis was blameless for voting in favor of fact-tracking it. Not going to work. Sorry, but the internet is forever. All of the shit that you've posted and everything about this is already archived. DeSantis voted in favor of a globalistic trade deal that would have demonstrably harmed the U.S. economy, probably worse than NAFTA did. Now, Trump addressed this by saying the TPP won't happen and NAFTA needs to be overhauled. He didn't do perfectly, although he did stop the TPP, but an attempt was made and the attempt was half successful. With Ron DeSantis, no fucking attempt was made whatsoever. And I get tired, by the way, of DeSantis morons misusing community notes, because that's about half of what I see. DeSantis fans and people with certain medical beliefs, as well as people from France for some reason, keep misusing the goddamn community notes and posting things that are completely irrelevant to the tweet. How does the form and function of the TPP have anything to do about Ron DeSantis having voted to fast track it? That's objectively correct. I posted my own note. Note above not needed. The claim is objective fact, which it is. DeSantis did indeed vote for the TPP fast track. The content of the bill is irrelevant to the original tweet, and opinions about the impact of the trade deal go in replies, not CN. Battle it out there. Point out that if you think that DeSantis is well served by defending the Trans-Pacific Partnership, do it publicly. Please do it publicly. I'm sure that you would get such a great reception. And then I posted the Ballotopedia page, which is pretty goddamn reliable with regards to Ron DeSantis's voting history. And that's how you do it. Now, there are people misusing community notes in the most spurious of manners, too. It makes absolutely no sense. You're so stuck up on this dude who's 30 points behind that you're lying through your teeth, basically. Medic Babe 21D. It's now entered in the official record of this country that Schiff is a lying bag of manure. This warms my heart, truly. Yeah, they should vote again to censure him for something unrelated. Then they can do what they did to Trump and say, well, he's the legendary first member of the House to be censored twice. Dante Iriola. If Putin and possibly Z waited for Trump to be out of office to invade, they seem to be running out of time to finish their takeover plans. Thoughts? Well, Xi has not invaded Taiwan yet. I get the reference. As far as Putin, he's got to be realistic. All of NATO has sent so much equipment and firepower to Ukraine that it's probably the best armed place in the world right now. It's certainly better armed than our southern border in the United States now, ain't it? Iggy the Incubus. And lo, for I beheld a drone. The question, flesh or silicone? Alarian Horizon. DeSantis simps love pushing fake polls and data. Well, everyone does that. Unless they're like me and they just like to analyze the polls and give nuance, most people misinterpret statistics, willingly or unwillingly. Dovahkeen092. Hey, Sticks, have you ever read The Reluctant Republic by Van de Water? I personally believe it is a must-read for every Vermonter. No, I haven't, actually. Magnum Norse. DeSantis is Diet Coke Trump. No, he's the dollar store knockoff brand imported from China, actually. He's not Diet Coke. Let's see. Fucking all sorts of super chats everywhere. Please send no more super chats. I got a few more things to go through. We're almost at 45 minutes. I've been ranting like an asshole. Sigil Stone. Everyone whines about Bill Gates buying farmland, but doesn't consider that land will feed him and his buddies another power play to stratify the nobility, while everyone else gets warehouse poison. Yeah, and also you can grow all sorts of crazy shit on there and then force the population to eat it. Swamp Donkey 69420. Responding to your video about Ultra MAGA, Trump unfortunately isn't the next Caesar. He doesn't have the ruthlessness of Caesar. The next Caesar is watching what they're doing to Trump and learning. Possibly. Yeah, as far as DeSantis goes, like, I mean, come on. I gave him a chance for months. Did I not say that in 2028 I'd be willing to vote for him? If he was like Trump's running mate, I would have had no problem with that before all the mistakes he's made. Didn't know, by the way, until this, that he had voted to fast-track the TPP. I wonder why I was unaware of that fact. Could it be because DeSantis doesn't like to talk about it? I wonder why. Doc Holliday. Chris Christie inhales cases of donuts and washes them down with gallons of chocolate and then regurgitates Orange Man bad. A good unit party stooge. Yeah, actually. Next news story. Did the FBI prevent Delaware agents from investigating Biden bribery allegations? If you go through the article, again, link in the description, archived, of course, yeah, the answer is yes. It looks like the FBI leaned on state prosecutors in Delaware to leave Joe Biden alone. There's nothing fishy about this, though. This is routine procedure. Hey, no. You suspend your investigation. We've got our own job to do. Don't worry, we'll take care of it. And then we find out that there was no wrongdoing whatsoever. Of course, because Orange Man bad. I'm just going to gloss over that story. I'm going to get distracted here in a minute by this cat, probably. Whenever it's hot and humid, she will snuggle. And she sheds like a motherfucker. Magnum Norse, DeSantis forgot who gave him his nomination in the first place. Yeah, I would like to remind people that he barely beat out a dude who now has been, I believe, imprisoned at this point for fraud, among other things, and provable fraud. Not, hey, the DOJ says that you're guilty, so you're guilty, but as in, we've got the receipts fraud. Among other things, he was found drugged out and passed out in a hotel room, I think with like a gay hooker or something, Gillum, there not long after the election. DeSantis beat him by like 0.2 or 0.02, actually, I think. And Trump did drag him across the finish line. To his credit, DeSantis won re-election by a huge margin. Partially his own strength, partially his enemy's weakness, partially, again, just the socio-political climate in Florida has shifted. But he did owe Trump at least his first term as governor. Definitely. He would not have won without that endorsement. Trump probably wishes he hadn't bothered at this point. Although he's done a decent job as governor, he's made too many mistakes as a candidate for the presidency. Next news story, and by the way, we might be getting some info literally today. So hold on to your assholes, boys. Affirmative action and student debt rulings loom at the U.S. Supreme Court. Yes, by the end of this month, which is a week away, we're going to get a couple of real big humdingers. Now, let me give my expectations for how they will rule. The Supreme Court is considering the legality of Harvard admissions processes. This was a case, by the way, brought by Asian students with regards to affirmative action. That's number one. And number two, is it legal for Joe Biden to unilaterally write off student loan debt in the executive capacity because you don't have the legislature actually doing that? I would say here's my expectation. I expect the Supreme Court to rule that Harvard and similar admissions processes are illegal. I would expect them to constrain their ruling. They could get rid of affirmative action altogether for education. In theory, they could also go even more broadly and say, look, this is discriminatory in admissions. It's also discriminatory in hiring. It's discriminatory in government positions, taxpayer-funded government positions, federal workers, state workers. It's illegal at the federal and state level. No, you cannot give this kind of preference. If there's any public money involved in it, again, federal, state workers, public schools, etc. If you've taken a grant and you're a private school, corporations that have taken a grant, they work with the government under some sort of fiscal arrangement, that you can't have affirmative action. That would be the best outcome. Affirmative action effectively is dead outside of like a small business, no public funding or anything like that. If you want to just hire black people, that's perfectly fine. If you want to hire just white people, that's perfectly fine. It's a small business. Maybe it's in your own home. Nobody really cares and nobody's impeded in society by that. If there's any money involved that's taxpayer funded, no affirmative action for you. That's what I hope. It's not what I expect. What I expect is for them to very strictly restrict their language just to the admissions policies of the specific defendants involved in this case. It'll probably be a 6-3 on that token. They strictly constrain it and say these particular policies have aggrieved specifically Asian students who are a minority that has faced many problems in the past. The Internment Act comes to mind, and so you can't do that. They will then leave the issue alone, and further issues against affirmative action go to lower courts. They hash it out, and if there's a compelling reason later on, they decide another round of casework. That's my expectation. I'm optimistic enough to say there is a possibility they go further. We're not sure how far they'd go, but the Supreme Court typically strictly constrains its decisions. On the issue of student loan debt forgiveness, it's 50-50. It's difficult for me to say whether they're going to declare that it's legal that Joe Biden randomly writes off debt despite the existence of promissory notes, and people in some cases will be getting debt relief when there's no reason for them to get it, or not getting it despite the fact that they do need it, at the expense of taxpayers who may not have even gone to college. The whole thing is screwy, but is it illegal? That's the question that they're going to have to grapple with. Regardless, we're going to get decisions on these in the coming days, roughly a week. We might get one or both of these decisions today. It will be big, regardless of what they decide. If they uphold affirmative action, it'll be a black day for America. That's not an intended pun, by the way, but it's possible. I don't think it's likely, though. I think they strike it down at the university level, possibly extend it to all education that has any public funding, endowments, etc., and leave it at that. Unfortunately, I don't think they extend it to the private workforce that gets government money through grants and stuff like that. They should. I would advise them to. There's a possibility they do. But I've seen enough over the last few years to not be 100% optimistic about the direction of that. So we will be getting those decisions soon. I am eagerly awaiting them. And trust me, even if I'm not capable of making a video at the time, I'll probably make a short just to give people the up and up, the breaking news. Hey, you know, they've ruled on student loans. Here's what the ruling was, or something like that. Again, please send no more super chats. I love money, but I also like to be able to make tuna sandwiches my way later, and I make them the right way. David Walk, $9.99, no comment. Thank you very much. Hink Hall, the Adam Friedland Show just interviewed Chris Cuomo, and it was pretty funny. They actually made him seem likable. That's quite a fucking spin. Chris Cuomo seemed likable? God damn. They must be a talented fucking show. Maybe I should go on there. Swamp Donkey, the only way to end anti-whiteism is through lawfare. Why even bother with federal courts? States should just force their institutions to abandon it if they don't want withdraw state funds. Again, it's possible the Supreme Court effectively destroys affirmative action in the next 24 hours. I'm not necessarily saying that's impossible. I'm just, at this point, I'm not capable of being quite so optimistic. It'll be a great day if they just, if the limitation is just, hey, you can't do it in the educational context. Even that would be a huge victory. It'd be the death of educational affirmative action, possibly laying the groundwork for future cases that have to do with federally granted, etc. jobs. But it will take time. The Supreme Court is obtuse and slow, partially by design. Next news story, glossing this over. Again, I'm going to buzz through these. CNN's presidential fact checker hasn't fact-checked Biden in months. Two things for you. Number one, this is a lie by omission. Biden lies constantly. If you were to fact check him, you'd find that he's told more lies than Trump did already, despite only serving a couple years on the job. I have no doubt of that whatsoever. So what do? You omit fact checking him. Secondly, this is more evidence that CNN has devolved into effectively uniparty state media. They are no longer even legacy media. They are the same as Pravda. In the literal sense, I tend not to draw such comparisons because usually it's apples to oranges. Yeah, they're both fruits, but they're different fruits. The kind of state media you get in foreign countries typically is not the same as, hey, it's state co-opted in some way. It's influenced by the state. It's biased. Okay, bias is something we all have. I wear it on my sleeve. I've got a libertarian bias. I've got a populistic bias. I'm fully admitting that to people right up front every time they watch my videos. I have religious bias. I have bias on food. I like pineapple on pizza. I happen to be at war with Razor Fist over this issue. We're going to have to we're going to have to dig trenches or something. But CNN pretends to be balanced in its coverage. But at the same time, Oliver Darcy, the CEO of their fucking company, admitted last year in February, I believe it was, that they literally took economic news marching orders direct from the White House. This is just an extension of that. They don't want to criticize Biden so much that they're not even willing to fact check him now. In admission, sometimes on air or in opinion pieces, there is a statement that, hey, Biden just told a fib. They usually pussyfoot around it and softball him, but they're willing to admit it. But their official fact checkers done goddamn nothing for a significant length of time. Interesting, because I remember live fact checking of Trump towards the end of his presidency. They're on CNN and elsewhere. They'd have a little ticker at the bottom. They would live fact check literally every word that he said. Not so for Joe Biden, despite a plethora of various lies and half-truths. Magnum Norse. Biden is a walking lie machine for the WEF. They own him. Absolutely. And then the final news story really quickly. The Dutch farm reform talks have collapsed. The Dutch Farmers Party, which is the largest political party in this country, I'm currently in the Netherlands, by the number of people that they have in the legislature, they were trying to work with the government to hammer out an agreement. So the tractor protests stop. The government backs off of its farm confiscation. They come to an agreement of some sort and say, look, yeah, we got elected here for a reason. You don't even have technically a ruling coalition. You have to buddy-buddy with parties that don't even agree with you on major issues to get anything done. And say this to Mark Rutte. So you're going to have to parlay with us. We're willing to sweeten the deal, come to the negotiating table. The farmers have withdrawn now. And they've said that there's no way forward. And that's because the Dutch government in its current inception still intends to steal a bunch of farmers' livelihood, preventing them from farming in any other EU nation. Here's my solution. I think the United States should step in. In fact, Trump should do this as a campaign pledge. Step in and say, we will broker this. Go ahead and buy them out. Give them more than 10% or whatever. Give them 200% or something. Buy them out. We'll issue them as asylum seekers in the United States because Trump wants to create his freedom cities, and we'll give them farmland. Yeah, we'd love to have a bunch of Dutch farmers there, a mini Friesland or something. That's about the best that you can hope for. There's not a whole lot of fallow land in the world outside of countries that have enormous swaths of national parks and military bases and so forth. In less glib terms, because I don't actually support that, it's a pipe dream. Really, the farmers at this point just fucking protest. Just take to the streets, block things off. As a consumer, here in the Netherlands, I got a child and a wife and stuff to take care of. I don't mind if I go to the Jumbo and I find that the produce is sparse. I really don't. I don't care if there's less bread. I don't care if I can't get milk or something like that. I'll make do. I'll figure out a way. If you relinquish now, you're going to be forced back further later. They're going to steal more farms. They're going to introduce a bill that makes you cut your farm in half. So, we'll reabsorb those farmers. They'll just have half as much land or something. They'll limit the amount of animals you can have, which I think they've already done. They'll limit the number of acres of andivie that you can grow. They'll tell you more and more and more what you can do with your land that in some cases has been in your family for 500 fucking years. And eventually you'll be effectively just a serf of the state. That's what they want. It's not about climate change. It's not about land usage. It's not about emissions. It has nothing to do with these things. The standards are all over the place, all around the world. If you cared about nitrogen emissions, you'd go after China. If you cared about CO2 emissions, you'd go after India. If you cared about heavy metals, you'd go after, well, both of them and half of fucking West Africa. This is not about these things. It's, if anything, you're reducing food security. They're going after the Netherlands uniquely in all of the EU states because it's the second largest producer of food in the entire world after the United States. This one tiny country that's barely bigger than my home state and its twin, which is not a goddamn big area of land, trust me. It is from the top of Killington, you can see a good proportion of New Hampshire, virtually all of Vermont, and well into the Catskills over New York, plus down on a good day into parts of Massachusetts. It's not a big area of land. And yet somehow the Dutch, inventive as they have been, have figured out a way to make sure that they grow more food than anyone else in the world other than the U.S. Look at the size of the U.S. and look at the size of the Netherlands. Jesus Christ, there's a reason they're going after you. It's because if shit hits the fan, if the Netherlands and everyone else, if there's a depression, if the WEF causes economic mayhem and meltdown, the Dutch will be able to eat. They'll still have food in their stomachs. They'll have potatoes and andivie and speck and other. So, you can make your stompat. You'll have your broccoli and your Swiss chard and your lamb meat and all this. It'll cost more, but you'll eat. Your kids won't starve. What do you think they're fucking doing, dude? Most countries in this world aren't even food self-sufficient at this point, including much of Europe. Most of Europe is not food self-sufficient. They're like, what? Are there 3-4 countries in Europe that can feasibly feed themselves if shit really hits the fan? That, the Netherlands, the United States, a handful of others. China can't do it. Fucking India can't do it, I think. I don't think they're food self-sufficient. There are a handful of countries in Southeast Asia that can. Yeah, when you're living on 800 calories a day, it's a little bit easier. This would be one of the few countries in the whole world that has enough farmers and enough farmland to be able to feed itself if global trade were to break down. That's why they're trying to break you down. And that's the long and short of it. So the Dutch farmers have my support. Again, I like to weigh in on Dutch politics as little as possible because I'm a resident, but I'm not a citizen. I have less skin in the game, relatively speaking. I don't speak fluent Dutch, although I'm learning. I wasn't born in the Netherlands, so I don't see it as my place to weigh in much. But for that purpose of analysis, damn right, I'm going to weigh in. I support the tractor protests. I support the farmers. And I support similar moves in the U.S. where they're trying to import the same fucking bullshit. Did you see what John Kerry said a few weeks ago? Analyzed it at the time. He's basically proposing the same thing. Ireland, they want to cull all of their cattle. Look, if every developed country in the world with a stable and safe food supply, especially of meat, because in third world countries, the meat has trichinosis and shit, so you better eat that steak well done. You don't have to worry about that. If it was born and raised in the Netherlands, by the way, you could eat it raw and it would be perfectly safe, more or less. What happens when all of the food begins to dwindle while the population is still rising? Well, you're sending enormous amounts of surplus, cheap, shitty grain to Ethiopia or whatever. People begin to suffer from more scarcity. The price goes up and the rich can still eat, but the poor can't. That's the whole fucking point. Now, part of it, maybe they're just trying to tackle the obesity crisis. We'll play devil's advocate and say the rich really do care about us. They're trying to make sure that we're not fat or something like that. Well, you know, that's going to be quite a thing when everyone is eating nothing but soy. They're going to blow it up like goddamn balloons. So yeah, now that I've had my rant with regards to that, by the way, over 3,200 people watching live on Rumble, about 1,000 more than watching on YouTube. I love being promoted by one site that understands my talent. Anyway, I'm going to go offline. I will be live tomorrow, probably a little bit longer tomorrow. But today, I've got to get out at some point here in the next hour-ish to the store because it's supposed to pour rain. And I'm McLovin' it because, other than the last storm that we had, there hasn't been rain in almost 3 weeks in this fucking country. And I don't know because it's basically a swamp. I always figured it rained nonstop here. That's about all.